Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating shift happening right across the map of the Americas. If you just go by the typical pop culture image, think sun-drenched beaches, incredibly colorful clothes, and that classic Hollywood trope of the fiery Latina whose whole life just revolves around romance and drama, well, you'd be looking at a mirage. And honestly, it's a mirage the world has been sold for decades. So let's look right past that mirage and ask ourselves the question, what is the actual real-world political power of women in the Americas? Because the truth, it's far more profound, incredibly powerful, and it's deeply influential on a global scale. While a lot of folks assume the northern part of the continent is just Hollywood and fast food, and the south is just one big vacation destination, the women across these incredibly diverse nations have been quietly pulling up a chair at the absolute highest tables of power. Okay, let's dive into this. On one hand, we've got that classic Hollywood stereotype we just talked about. But on the other, we have the hard political reality. Did you know that Argentina actually boasts a higher percentage of women in its national parliament than the United States? It's true. It's completely wild, right? Smaller nations across this vast landmass have literally leapfrogged larger, historically dominant countries when it comes to female political representation. So today, we are shattering that old stereotype entirely. To track this transformation, we've got a clear roadmap for today. First, we'll explore the pioneers of the North. Then we'll head down to look at South America's political powerhouse. After that, we absolutely have to confront the struggle for justice. And finally, we'll see how these incredible leaders are weaving a new horizon. All right, Part 1, Pioneers of the North, from the Caribbean to Mexico. When we look beyond the US and Canada to the 23 different countries and territories making up North America, we find some serious catalysts for change. Take this number, a staggering 99% literacy rate in Caribbean nations like Barbados and Trinidad. I mean, wow, that isn't just an impressive stat to throw around at trivia night, it is a foundational key to power. This level of exceptional education, which, by the way, totally outpaces a lot of European nations, served as the ultimate catalyst. It aggressively kicked open political doors that had been locked tight for centuries. Because, education breeds ambition, and ambition demands a voice. And man, did that highly educated voice deliver. It led directly to some truly formidable female leaders who didn't just participate in politics, they grabbed the absolute highest reins of their countries. Portia Simpson Miller stepped right up as the Prime Minister of Jamaica, completely guiding her nation's destiny. Meanwhile, Kamla Bisesar set an incredible standard of leadership as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. These women were out there shattering glass ceilings on their islands way before it became a mainstream global talking point. Now, as we shift our map westward over to Mexico, we've got to confront a massive, and I mean massive, historical roadblock: machismo. While technically defined as strong or aggressive masculine pride, in our context today, it represents a centuries-old, deeply entrenched cultural barrier stretching right across the Americas. For generations, this immense historical weight basically dictated that power, leadership, and decision-making were strictly boys' clubs. So overcoming this, it wasn't just about winning an election, it was about totally rewriting a deeply ingrained cultural DNA. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer magnitude of what just happened recently. Claudia Sheinbaum won the 2024 election, becoming Mexico's very first female president in over 200 years of independent history. No way, right? Her historic victory is not just some neat political milestone. It is a massive, echoing declaration against centuries of that exact machismo we just talked about. It proves that these cultural barriers, no matter how old, no matter how aggressive, are finally crumbling. Moving on to Part 2, South America's political powerhouse: education and ambition. Heading south, past the Amazon, the boundaries being broken down here are honestly just spectacular. Seriously, forget the stereotype that South America is just one giant tourist hotspot. South American women are rapidly becoming some of the most professionally ambitious individuals on the entire globe. Just look at Chile. Michelle Bachelet didn't just win the presidency once, she served 2 whole terms, and then took her leadership to the global stage as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. And in Bolivia, we saw a massive, game-changing shift when the country welcomed its first indigenous female acting president. This is absolutely crucial because it shows that political power has actively moved away from just the traditional wealthy urban elites and is reaching deep into the indigenous roots of the continent. Now, what's really interesting is the sheer economic leverage these nations actually hold. The lithium triangle, which is made up of Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, controls roughly 55% of the global lithium share. That is huge. I mean, lithium is literally the critical resource powering our modern world. It's in everything from your smartphone to electric vehicles. So the female leaders rising up in these exact countries are now directly influencing the management and protection of over half the world's most critical futuristic resource. That is real, tangible, heavy-hitting geopolitical power.
Which brings us to part 3, the struggle for justice, confronting the darkness.
To truly understand the depth of this incredible rise to power, we really have to acknowledge that it didn't just happen in a vacuum. Actually, it was forged in a very dark, incredibly violent reality that women across the Americas have faced for decades. The stats here are genuinely chilling. Violence against Indigenous women in Canada is 12 times higher than the national average. Let that sink in. And if we look south to Central America, we find some of the most devastatingly high rates of femicide, which is the targeted killing of women in the entire world. So these political triumphs we've been discussing, they were born out of absolute necessity. These women had to seize power because, frankly, their very survival depended on it. But out of all this darkness came an absolute force of nature, ni una menos, which translates to not one less. Born right in Argentina, this massive grassroots feminist movement erupted as a powerful societal solution to that horrific violence. It wasn't just a polished political campaign, it was a desperate, powerful cry for life. Millions, literally millions of people poured into the streets, standing shoulder to shoulder in relentless protest against these staggering injustices. Let's move to and see how this builds directly into actual legislative change. Because of that relentless grassroots movement, female representation in Argentina's National Congress sits at a massive 42% today. It's incredible. The raw energy from the streets of the Ni Una Menos protests transformed directly into seats in parliament. To put that into perspective, this level of representation vastly outshines many of the most advanced Western democracies. It's just a direct, powerful testament to turning pain into undeniable political power.
And finally, part 4, weaving a new horizon, the American tapestry.
Let's travel high up into the Andean mountains of Peru for a second. We really need to connect these modern, incredible political victories with the ancient, quiet resilience that has literally always pulsed through this continent. Take the alo weaving tradition, for example. This is the art of preserving 2,500-year-old techniques, where an artisan spends up to 300 meticulous hours crafting just a single belt. I mean, that is dedication. It perfectly captures the unmatched strength, patience, and absolute drive of American women. Think about it. The exact same endurance required to weave those intricate threads is the exact same endurance required to dismantle 200 years of political machismo. These leaders are taking those ancient threads and combining them with modern politics to weave a completely new, incredibly powerful American tapestry. The women of this vast continent are just no longer accepting the roles assigned to them, whether that's by old traditional cultures or by cheap pop culture stereotypes. From the hardworking artisan high in the Andes to the literal president in Mexico, they are completely redefining themselves. They are ambitious titans of industry, economics, and governance, fully shedding the skin of those old, tired Hollywood tropes. So the crucial point is this. Is America just a Hollywood myth full of beaches and dramatic romance, or is it actually the story of women quietly, fiercely, and strongly changing the course of global history? The next time you think of the Americas, I really challenge you to look right past that old mirage. Look at the parliaments, look at the boardrooms, and look at the presidents. The reality isn't just a fiery stereotype, it is an absolute political powerhouse. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer today, and I really hope you leave here seeing the world just a little bit differently.